Welcome the anointed ones. Expose them, Lord, not with thunder, but with truth so loud it echoes in their own silence. You ever wonder what happens when people dig graves for others but forget they're standing in sinking sand? Well, buckle up, because God didn't just uncover their secret agendas toward you. He served them a divine meal, cold, calculated, and karmic, with a side of poetic justice. Here's a sobering fact. Studies in human psychology show that most betrayals aren't random, they're strategic, often plotted by those closest to us. And when you're a chosen one, you're not just targeted for who you are, you're hunted for what you carry. They thought you were blind. God let them believe that. They thought you were powerless. God let them flex. They thought they were winning. God let them dig deeper, not knowing they were burying themselves beneath the weight of their own deception. And now, the masks have melted. The group chats are in shambles and the whispers turned into screams, because judgment came dressed in silence, and it hit like a divine plot twist. See, God didn't need to lift a finger. He let them expose themselves. And the best part, some of them are still sitting there, wondering how the very thing they planned against you blew up in their own faces like a bad hair day at a fireworks show. So don't move, don't blink. Don't even sip your tea too loudly, because what's about to unfold is deeper than karma, louder than vengeance, and slicker than any setup they thought would work. God exposed it all, and trust me, they didn't see the subpoena from heaven coming. Let's dive in. Number 1, God let them plot just enough to build their own trap. They thought they had you cornered, thought their plan was airtight. They whispered behind closed doors, practiced fake smiles in the mirror, and acted out roles like life was their personal theater. But what they didn't know was that God saw everything, and He was letting them build the perfect setup, not for your downfall, but for theirs. God let them plot just long enough for the trap to become theirs. He didn't stop them right away, because He was watching something deeper unfold. He was allowing them to reveal the full extent of their darkness. Every lie they told, every manipulation they weaved, every time they tried to pull strings behind your back, it was all being used against them, not because God was slow to respond, but because He was letting the evidence pile up. You didn't need to defend yourself. You didn't have to expose them. They exposed themselves. The more they schemed, the more they slipped. The more they tried to trip you, the more they tangled themselves. Their egos convinced them that they were 10 steps ahead, but they didn't realize God was the board they were playing on, and the game already rigged against them. It's funny how people think they're clever when they move in secrecy. They think as long as no one's watching, they'll get away with it. But they forgot one thing: you're covered by a God who sees in the dark. And when He's quiet, it's never weakness, it's strategy. Now they're confused. Things are falling apart. They can't explain why everything's backfiring, but deep down they feel it. That sting of exposure, that divine justice unfolding slowly like a slow-motion replay of every move they made. And you didn't have to lift a finger. You were protected in silence while their own hands wrote their destruction. That's not karma, that's God, serving them with precision, grace, and a smirk only heaven understands. Number 2, their access wasn't a blessing, it was surveillance. They thought being close to you was a privilege, but in reality, their access was a setup. God didn't let them in because they were loyal. He let them in so their true motives could be observed, tracked, and eventually exposed. They thought they were in control, moving pieces in silence, smiling in your face while plotting behind your back. But all the while, God was collecting receipts. Their closeness wasn't about connection, it was surveillance, spiritual surveillance. They were allowed into your space so they could be monitored through you. Every time they tested your boundaries, God was taking note. Every shady comment, every passive-aggressive jab, every manipulative move, they were all part of a divine investigation. And now, the report is complete, and judgment is being handed down. They assumed they were using you. What they didn't realize was that God was using them. He gave them just enough rope to show who they really were, and now the mask is off. Not because you confronted them, but because God uncovered what they tried to bury deep. They'll say you changed. They'll say you're acting different. But the truth is, they were never for you in the first place. They were simply allowed in to reveal themselves. And the longer they stayed around you, the more obvious their true nature became. God let you witness it all, not to break you, but to build your discernment. You weren't losing people, you were losing liabilities. Now they're uncomfortable, awkward. Some are quiet, some are suddenly absent. They don't know how to face you because deep down, they know you see through them now. What they once thought was manipulation has become a mirror, reflecting their own intentions right back at them. The truth is out. They were never hidden from God. He just let them believe they were, until it was time to serve the consequences. And now every secret plan they whispered in the dark is speaking louder than ever, and it's not in their favor. Number 3, God let the snake speak so the mask would slip. God didn't stop the betrayal right away because he needed the snake to speak first. That's how real exposure happens, not when people are still hiding, but when they get comfortable enough to show you who they really are. That's what happened. They thought they had you fooled, thought they could slither around in your space, pretend to be loyal, pretend to care, while feeding you venom in small, sneaky doses. But God was silent, not because he wasn't watching, but because he was waiting for them to say too much. And they did. They got bold. They started revealing themselves in little ways: sarcasm, backhanded compliments, strange patterns, disrespect covered in fake concern. But what they didn't know is that God had already shifted your eyes. You started catching things you used to ignore. That wasn't a coincidence. That was revelation. When snakes feel safe, they stop hiding. They come out in the open and hiss freely, and that's what you saw. Not a slip-up, not a bad day. It was who they always were, just finally exposed. God didn't rush to protect you from the heartbreak because the heartbreak was part of the awakening. You needed to see it clearly, feel it deeply, and never doubt it again. That's how God works with chosen ones. He doesn't just protect you by removing danger, he strengthens you by revealing it. You don't grow by being kept safe. You grow by seeing through the deception and standing anyway. That's why God let the snake talk. That's why he let the mask slip. Because once it did, you couldn't unsee it. Now they're panicking, scrambling, saying it was a joke, a misunderstanding, that you're overreacting. But no, you're not crazy. You're not bitter. You're awake. And they're terrified because they know they can't hide anymore. God didn't need to expose them with fire. He exposed them with truth. Quiet, sharp, and undeniable. And now they've been seen for exactly who they are, and that's the part they can't recover from. Number 4, their hidden hands were seen by the eyes that see all. They were so confident in their secrecy, whispering behind walls, deleting messages, making sure there were no witnesses. They moved like puppeteers in the dark, convinced they were invisible, like their hands were too hidden to ever be traced. But here's what they forgot. God doesn't blink. The same God who called you, anointed you, and placed purpose in your bones has been watching every move, every word, every act of sabotage, quietly but thoroughly. They thought they could hide what they were doing because no one around them saw it. They mistook human silence for divine blindness. They didn't realize that while they were plotting, God was archiving. Every message they sent about you, every lie they spread, every alliance they formed behind your back to tarnish your name or block your blessings. It's all been documented in the realm where nothing is ever erased. What makes this so powerful is that God let them believe they were getting away with it. That's the part that messes with them now. Because while they were busy trying to orchestrate your downfall, they didn't realize they were starring in their own exposure. You were never outnumbered. You were being protected by a God who doesn't need to announce his presence to make an impact. And now, the exposure is happening in ways they never expected. Connections are falling apart. Their plans are collapsing. People are seeing through their fake personas. The same hands they tried to keep hidden are now being revealed in full daylight. Because God doesn't need a courtroom to serve justice. He does it in real time, in public and without warning. They thought they were operating in stealth, but the whole time the all-seeing eyes of God were watching and waiting. And when he strikes, it's never emotional, it's surgical, swift, precise. They thought they were getting away with it, until they realized the eyes that never sleep already saw everything. Number 5, they weren't fighting you, they were testing God's threshold. They thought they were picking on you, thought you were just another person they could bully, sabotage, or manipulate. But what they didn't understand was that you weren't the battlefield. You were the line in the sand. Every insult, every scheme, every moment they tried to undermine you was never just an attack on you. It was a test of how far they could push before heaven responded. They weren't just being cruel, they were measuring limits, poking at the edges of divine patience, seeing how far they could twist the truth, delay your progress, humiliate your name, and smile while doing it without facing any real consequences. And for a while it looked like they were winning. You stayed quiet, you didn't clap back, you didn't retaliate. But that wasn't because you were weak. That was because God was letting them write their own sentence with every move they made. God gave them time, not to spare them, but to make sure that when the judgment came, there would be no excuses, no confusion, no, I didn't know. He let them get bolder, let them do more, let them say it louder, nastier, and with more arrogance, because the greater the evil, the louder the justice when it lands. And now they're feeling it, the shift, the tension, the unexplainable resistance in their lives. Their plans don't flow like they used to. Their energy's off. People are backing away. Doors are closing. That's not just karma. That's the consequence of pressing too far against something sacred. You were never just a target. You were a warning sign they ignored. They didn't know that by testing how far they could go with you, they were really testing how long God would hold back his hand. And now, that hand has moved. And the blow won't be petty. It'll be final. Because when heaven responds, it doesn't argue. It ends things. Number 6, God turned their group chats into their guillotine. They thought their little group chats were safe zones. Safe to vent, safe to lie, safe to manipulate your name without consequence. They thought as long as it was typed in secret and hidden behind a screen, it wouldn't carry weight. But what they didn't realize is that heaven doesn't need screenshots to collect receipts. Spiritual evidence is always being recorded, and nothing said in darkness stays hidden for long. They laughed about you, twisted your words, plotted your setbacks like it was entertainment. They bonded over your pain. Every LOL, every fake sympathy followed by a knife in the back, every schemed message with smiling emojis. God saw it all. But instead of shutting it down instantly, he let it build. Not because he was absent, but because he was making the takedown poetic. Now, the very people they gossiped with are starting to turn on them. The group chat that once made them feel powerful has become a graveyard of betrayals. Secrets are leaking, conversations are being exposed, and even worse, some don't even know why everything in their life is falling apart. But you do, because spiritual law is undefeated. What they released in private has come back multiplied, and it's destroying their alliances from the inside. Some of them are fighting each other now. Whisper campaigns turning into loud accusations. Paranoia has set in. Loyalty is crumbling. The same energy they used to tear you down is now tearing them apart, and they can't stop it. Because the power behind it isn't human. It's divine justice. The group chat was never private. It was a spiritual courtroom, and the words they thought would never see the light of day are now being echoed in their own lives through confusion, exposure, and losses they can't explain. The trap they built with their words has become their own guillotine, and it's slicing through the very reputations they tried to protect. That's not drama. It's divine payback. Number 7, they made you their obsession. Now God made you their lesson. They watched your every move, not out of love but obsession. You became their favorite topic, their silent competition, their secret target. They studied you like a project, mimicked your style, copied your ideas, tried to beat you at your own essence. And the more they watched, the more they burned with envy. You didn't do anything to provoke it. Your presence alone was enough to make them uncomfortable. They couldn't figure out how you kept rising, kept glowing, kept surviving. They tried to dim you with criticism, undermine you with gossip, throw shade like it was their job. But what they didn't understand is that when you mess with a chosen one, you're not just playing with a person. You're provoking divine consequence. They didn't want to be inspired. They wanted to replace you. So they watched your page, stole your words, tracked your life like private investigators hoping to find a flaw, a weakness, a crack. And yet the more they tried to break you down, the more God built you up. That's what drove them mad. No matter what they threw, you stayed standing. And now, that obsession has flipped on them. What they once fixated on has become the very thing they can't escape. They're losing sleep over someone who's not even checking for them. The same fire they tried to throw at you has caught hold of their own lives. Their plans are falling apart. Their peace is gone. Their circles are crumbling because they weren't just watching, they were cursing, projecting, comparing, And God doesn't allow that kind of energy to roam free when it's targeted at someone he's covered. Now you've become their lesson. Your name is etched in their conscience, not as the one they defeated, but the one they couldn't touch, couldn't shake, couldn't copy, couldn't break. You are the evidence that playing with divine favor comes with a price. You didn't ask to be their obsession, but now you're the consequence they can't escape. Number 8, God let you play the fool, so they'd reveal their true nature. They thought they had you figured out, thought you were naive, clueless, maybe even dumb. You didn't react. You didn't expose them. You didn't clap back. So they assumed you didn't see what they were doing. But what they didn't realize is that your silence was strategic. You weren't ignoring the signs. You were letting God run the board. While they were making slick moves trying to undermine you, you were playing divine chess with the Creator as your coach. God allowed you to play the fool, not because you were one, but because he knew pride always reveals itself under the illusion of control. He knew that the moment they felt like they were smarter, stronger, or more important than you, their real faces would show. And they did. Bit by bit, the mask slipped. The fake support turned cold. The smiles became forced. The compliments started sounding more like digs. You felt the shift, and you kept quiet. That wasn't fear. That was wisdom. They mistook your patience for passivity. They thought they were rising above you when really they were just climbing higher up the pedestal of their own downfall. Because here's the thing. God watches pride rise just enough to make the fall impossible to ignore. And now, that same arrogance they wore like a crown has turned into a noose around their own influence. People are starting to see it, the manipulation, the control, the contradiction. Your silence became their mirror. You didn't need to retaliate. They exposed themselves just by thinking you wouldn't notice, and now they're scrambling, trying to reframe the story, claiming you changed, pretending they didn't mean what they said, but it's too late. The venom's already out. Their own mouths did the damage. Their own ego lit the match. And God? He's not even angry. He's precise. He let them rise just high enough to make their fall a warning to everyone watching. You didn't lose by staying silent. You won by letting their arrogance scream louder than your words ever needed to. Number 9, the ones who said, "I got you," were the ones sent to test if you'd bow. They came into your life talking smooth. "I got you. I'll protect you. You don't have to go through this alone." On the surface, it looked like loyalty, like support, maybe even love. But underneath, it was a setup. Their kindness had strings attached. Their offers had silent contracts. They weren't there to lift you. They were there to test you, to see if your purpose, your identity, your walk with God could be bought. They didn't show up to support you. They showed up to redirect you, to lead you off course, to quietly shift your focus from divine purpose to dependence on them. But you didn't bite. You might have considered it. You might have been tempted. You might have even leaned in a little. But something in your spirit just couldn't bow. You couldn't give them that kind of access to your soul, not because you were ungrateful, but because something felt off. And now you know why. Their help was never pure. It was a leash, a trap, a loyalty test masked as generosity. And when they realized you wouldn't worship them, when they saw that you couldn't be bought, controlled, or emotionally blackmailed, they flipped. The same people who swore they had your back suddenly vanished, got cold, got bitter, started talking sideways. That wasn't just rejection. That was exposure. They were never sent to bless you. They were sent to test you, to see if you'd trade your assignment for comfort, to see if you'd bow to a human instead of standing with God. And when you didn't, that sealed it. You passed the test, and they failed the mission. Now the betrayal is haunting them because they know they lost access to something sacred. They touched what they didn't understand, and when it didn't break, it reflected their own brokenness back at them. You didn't fold, you didn't sell out, you didn't bow, and now they're left watching as God elevates you without their help, without their protection, and without their approval. Number 10, God delayed your vindication to make their fall public. You prayed for justice. You waited for the truth to come out. You kept asking God, why won't you just clear my name? What you didn't realize at the time was that God wasn't ignoring your cry. He was setting the stage. Because when you're a chosen one, vindication isn't meant to be quiet. It's meant to be unforgettable. He could have stepped in early, could have whispered the truth into the right ears, could have shut down the lies before they spread, but if he had, it would have let your enemies walk away with their egos untouched. It would have allowed them to say, well, maybe it wasn't that serious, or let's just move on. But God wasn't interested in protecting their pride. He was interested in exposing their deception with precision. So he let them talk, let them perform, let them build a narrative so loud, so cocky, so certain that the fall would be undeniable. He let them rally others against you, smile while slandering you, throw dirt on your name thinking it would bury you, all while you stayed silent. Not because you were weak, but because God was holding you back until the moment would sting the most. And now it's happening. The truth is leaking through the cracks they never saw coming. The lies they told are unraveling publicly. People are starting to question them. Some are walking away. Some are watching in shock as the very stage they built to shame you is collapsing beneath them. This isn't a private correction. It's a public dismantling, not out of spite, but out of divine justice. Because God doesn't vindicate his own in shadows. He does it in broad daylight, so nobody can pretend they didn't see it. And as for you, you didn't have to fight. You didn't have to explain. You just had to endure. Now God is making your name shine in places where they tried to ruin it. Their fall is the proof. Your peace is the verdict. Number 11. They didn't just touch you, they touched the God that sent you. They thought they were messing with you, thought they were hurting just a person, just someone they didn't like, just someone they could silence, undermine, or humiliate. But what they failed to understand is that you weren't walking through life alone, you were sent. You weren't just a human being trying to survive, you were on assignment, handpicked, anointed, covered, protected, backed by the very force they dared to challenge. So when they came for you, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, they weren't just coming for a target. They were launching attacks straight at the one who called you. Every weapon they formed wasn't hitting just flesh and blood. It was being aimed at divine purpose, and that's where they crossed the line. They thought they were being clever. But what they did was pick a fight they could never win. You weren't chosen by popular vote. You were dispatched by divine instruction. So the backlash that's coming to them now, it's not personal. It's not about payback. It's about protocol. They violated spiritual law. They touched what was sacred. They laid hands, verbally, emotionally, and spiritually, on a soul that didn't belong to them. And when you do that to a vessel God has assigned, there is always a response. But it's never from the vessel. It's from heaven itself. That's why things are falling apart in their lives, and they don't even know where it started. That's why doors are slamming shut. Why their influence is drying up, why their peace has evaporated. Because when they touched you, they activated a consequence that doesn't come with a warning, it comes with weight. You didn't have to defend yourself because God was never going to let that slide. He doesn't play when it comes to those he sent. And now the judgment is in motion, not out of vengeance, but because he protects his investment. And you, chosen one, were sent here to shift atmospheres, not suffer at the hands of people too blind to recognize heaven's mark on you. Number 12. God didn't just reveal their agendas, he reversed them. They really thought they had it all mapped out. From the lies they spread to the energy they threw, they planned your downfall like it was guaranteed. Some even dabbled in things they had no business touching. Speaking curses, wishing harm, and preying on your weaknesses instead of for your healing. But what they didn't factor in was that you serve a God who specializes in divine reversals. He didn't just expose what they were doing behind closed doors, he flipped it. Every hex they sent to drain your strength ended up fueling your elevation. Every curse they whispered in secret became the very reason your name got mentioned in rooms they can't even enter. They tried to shame you, and God turned that shame into spotlight. They tried to isolate you, and he gave you peace they can't disturb. This wasn't a simple survival story. It's not just that you made it out. It's that you're walking through the fire they lit with blessings they'll never touch. That's what happens when you're protected by divine law. What was meant to break you builds you. What was designed to kill your reputation ends up establishing it. And the best part, you didn't have to fight dirty. You just stayed aligned. God took their wicked intentions and made them stepping stones. And the more they pushed, the higher you rose. The more they plotted, the faster their own lives unraveled. That's not coincidence, that's consequence. The boomerang has returned, and it's not just correcting the narrative, it's punishing the authors. They planned your humiliation and ended up becoming the ones exposed. They prayed for your downfall, and now they're watching you wear the very crown they tried to snatch. Not out of revenge, but because what they meant for evil, God turned for exceptional good. You weren't just delivered, you were crowned with the very ashes they thought would bury you. Number 13. Your pain was heaven's legal evidence. Every tear you cried in secret, every night you couldn't sleep because the weight was too much, none of it was wasted. While you were going through it, it felt like you were being broken. But in the courts of heaven, you were actually building a case. Every time you chose not to retaliate, every time you forgave when you wanted to explode, every time you stayed quiet while they lied on your name, that was spiritual evidence. And heaven recorded all of it. They thought they were getting away with it. Thought your silence meant weakness. But your silence was submission to a higher judge. You weren't just enduring pain, you were testifying through your endurance. Your suffering wasn't a sign that God forgot you. It was a setup to prove exactly who you are and who they really were when no one was watching. You didn't beg for justice, you didn't demand vengeance. You just kept going, carrying wounds only God could see. And that's exactly what made your case airtight. Because while they manipulated, mocked, and misrepresented you, you kept showing up, kept loving, kept giving, kept walking with grace. And every act of obedience became a statement in heaven's courtroom. Now the verdict has been read and it's not up for debate. Guilty, without appeal. Because God doesn't miss details, He doesn't overlook pain. And He definitely doesn't ignore those who cry out to Him from a place of innocence. What you thought was just heartbreak became a legal document in the Spirit. And now the sentence is being carried out, not in secret, but in full view. They don't understand why things are unraveling for them, why peace is fleeing, why relationships are falling apart, why doors are slamming. It's because your pain triggered a response from heaven. And when God judges based on truth, there's no defense, no excuse, no manipulation that can stand. Your pain wasn't just for you, it was the evidence God used to set you free and shut them down for good. Number 14, God's justice was never loud, but it was lethal. They expected a loud reaction from you. They waited for you to explode, to fight back, to stoop to their level, but you didn't. You stayed quiet, not because you didn't feel the pain, but because you trusted something bigger. God's justice doesn't come with sirens and drama. It moves like a silent storm, and by the time it hits, it's too late to run. While they mocked you behind your back, you were healing, quietly. While they laughed at your struggles, you were growing. In the background, in the shadows, where transformation happens without applause. They thought your silence meant defeat, but really, it meant you were being rebuilt by divine hands. And that kind of restoration can't be rushed or stopped. They saw you suffering and thought it was over for you, thought they'd broken your spirit. But what they didn't know was that every wound they caused became a doorway for God's justice to enter. He saw it all, He heard what they said, watched how they moved, but He didn't react instantly because real justice doesn't show up to entertain, it shows up to finish things. Now the shift has begun. The things they once bragged about are crumbling. The influence they flexed is drying up. The alliances they used against you are turning on them, not because you cursed them, but because God timed their exposure to match your rise. As you step into your healing, your confidence, your assignment, they're stepping into the consequences they earned when they tried to destroy what heaven was building. And you don't have to get loud. You don't need revenge. Your victory is loud enough. It speaks for itself. You're rising in ways they can't block. You're glowing in places they can't follow, and they're left speechless. Not because you clapped back, but because God's quiet justice left no room for excuses. He didn't need to shout. He just needed time. And now that the time has come, you are the proof that heaven doesn't miss. You've walked through storms they thought would drown you. You've faced battles fought not just by human hands, but by forces desperate to see you fall. Yet here you stand, stronger, wiser, and unbreakable. What they tried to hide, God has revealed. What they plotted in secret, He has exposed with divine precision. Their agendas are no longer whispers in the dark. They are the loud echoes of a judgment they cannot escape. Remember this, every act of betrayal, every moment of silence, every tear you shed was never wasted. It was all part of a greater plan, a plan where your pain becomes proof, your endurance becomes testimony, and your victory becomes inevitable. You were never alone in the fight. You were never left defenseless. The one who anointed you was watching, waiting, and moving behind the scenes to serve justice with perfect timing. Now they're the ones on the spotlight, unraveling under the weight of their own schemes. And you are rising, quietly, powerfully, and without apology. Not because you sought revenge, but because divine justice doesn't need noise to be heard. It needs faith, patience, and truth. This is your moment. Your vindication is real, and it's visible. Keep walking your path with confidence, knowing that God's justice isn't just coming, it's already here. The fall of those who plotted against you isn't just a story of defeat for them. It's a testament to your resilience and a warning to anyone who dares to stand against what God has ordained. Stay strong, stay focused, and let your life be the loudest declaration that nothing hidden remains hidden forever, and that God's truth always wins. If this message spoke to your soul and shook something deep inside, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button now to join a community that's rising together, grounded in truth and unstoppable faith. Show some love by liking this video, because every like fuels the energy to keep delivering these powerful messages. Drop a comment below and share your story or how this truth impacted you. Your voice could be the breakthrough someone else desperately needs. And most importantly, share this with someone who's walking through their own battles, because together we rise, we heal, and we conquer. This is just the beginning. Stay connected, stay empowered, and keep shining your light unapologetically. God bless you.